Welcome to the Power Hour, Optometry's biggest and longest running show. We're now in our 13th season. I'm your host, Eugene Shatsman, and today's episode is really a unique look through the lens of one of the greats. My guest needs no introduction, Dr. Gary Gerber, someone I'm absolutely honored to host every single time he comes on the show. And while it's fun to catch up and hear what Gary's been up to in his life after optometry, the conversation today actually makes a very, very profound point. So sure, Gary talks about how he's having a ball on tour with a band right now, but also he covers how creating a practice that allows you to do whatever it is that's super exciting to you earlier, not after you retire, but earlier while you still own the practice, that activity actually increases your enterprise value of your practice in many ways. So this is actually where we spend a lot of time on the episode. We leverage Gary's massive experience in helping thousands of doctors build better practices. We leverage that experience to discuss what actually helps grow your enterprise value. And it's pretty clear that the same recommendations that grow your enterprise value are also the same things that allow you to achieve more in your life outside of optometry while you still own your practice. So whether you're starting out or you're in the thick of it or you're thinking about a sale, it doesn't matter. The advice here is hyper relevant at every stage of practice ownership. And we even dig into the biggest mistakes that kill enterprise value, often without business owners realizing it. So this is a great episode. Gary tells some really cool stories, reflects on his own regrets or kind of like the wish I'd known moments. And he also provides a ton of strategic and tactical advice. So whether you're in building mode or you're in growing mode, if you're considering selling or you just want to breathe a little bit easier in your practice, this is a great episode to help put things into perspective. So before we dive in, quick reminder, I always welcome your feedback and ideas. Please reach out to me directly at the show website or at eugeneshatsman.com. And now let's go to the show. All right. Welcome to the Power Hour. Gary, welcome back to the Power Hour. Excited to have you back on the show.
Yeah, great to be back again. And I don't know if the first 400 episodes count that I did, but that'd
That's
be
what
again
I'm
and
thinking.
again and again and again and again.
Right. We could be here for the next hour recounting those.
Yeah.
You've been up to some really interesting things, and I wanted to pick your brain on two major topics today. And I think that there probably is an interesting connection is, you've been pursuing your passion, which you got a chance to do somewhat after in the time that I knew you in running the power practice and even somewhat before, but really you've gone full time into pursuing passion projects or passion activities after optometry. So today I wanted to talk about two things. Number one is life after optometry. And really the second one being how do you get there, which is, maximizing your enterprise value. And we can talk about them in that order or in the reverse order. Logically, what do you think, Gary?
Yeah, good topics. I actually think they're somewhat related and part of the same story, like not necessarily two separate topics and two separate events. I think they're part of a continuum, but they're interconnected as you kind of go through your career. So I think that may be a good way to frame this up. Good topic.
So maybe just fill in the audience for a second for those that haven't been closely following. What are you up to these days, and
Yeah.
when did you get into it?
Yep. So got a lot of stuff going on. I kind of quick bio if you're just hearing me for the first time. Had an optometry practice for years in northern New Jersey. Sold that, started a consulting company called the Power Practice, which is where the Power Hour started. Sold that and started a company called Treehouse Eyes. Have not sold that, but I'm not involved with the day-to-day running as much anymore, just doing more kind of consulting and advisory work there. And throughout all of that, I've always been a musician, a keyboard player. And in fact, before optometry school, I went to school in Indiana University, which has a great music school. I was my undergraduate, and I, really got a taste of like really good quality music education there.
Mm.
And always had it in the back of my mind that I wanted to pursue, at the same time I was an optometrist, I wanted to pursue music more and more intently. And I played in bands while I was at IU in Indiana. I played in bands when I went to SUNY and optometry. When I got out, I was always playing in bands. So I never kind of stopped playing. Everybody's got different hobbies. Music was, was kind of more than a hobby now. We'll talk about that, but it was some doctors would play golf on the weekends. I would go play with an '80s hair band on a cruise ship somewhere. It was
Yeah.
just different kind of hobby, but never really got the music bug out of me. For the musicians listening, I think it's something it's just a party. It doesn't leave. If you don't play for a couple of weeks, you just kind of like riding a bike. You always lose a little bit. You got to get back in the zone. Um, so yeah, been kind of doing both, and yeah, let's leave it at that for now because I want to get that enterprise thing. I think that's a really important piece
All right. Well,
to
so we're going
this.
to go to the enterprise value, but I will say that the we'll call it the legacy lives on because at every power practice annual retreat meeting, which I think you probably started this tradition, is that there's a performance by a band made up of the doctors. So all the musicians in the room
Yeah,
perform after dinner on one of the nights and one of the big receptions. And so, I've been hearing I got a chance to speak at the last few power practice retreats, and I've been hearing the power practice band, which I imagine you were the headliner of.
yeah, yeah. It was the power band, and it was an interesting idea that kind of came to me because I was having discussions like this, talking to clients, saying, there's stuff after optometry, life goes on. So it should be something you might want to plan for now. And I would talk about some of the planning I was doing, and I would talk about my music, and it turns out there's a lot of doctors who are musicians. And I came up with the idea, you're coming to this meeting anyway, why don't we put a band together? So I was fortunate because at the time I was living in North Jersey, um, about 20 miles from New York City, and I was doing a lot of studio work in New York City, and I knew a lot of studio session guys. So when you have doctors all over the country converging for an event, you can't really get a lot of rehearsal time in, or in our case, really any rehearsal. So I wanted to make sure we sounded really good. So I brought in a couple like ringers, if you
Mhm.
will. So I had myself and three or four other session guys that I would fly in, and then we had whoever wanted to come up and play could play. And some years we had like 12, 13 guys up on the stage. It was awesome. And then we
That's
had
cool.
as the core group, I had Ted Nugent's bass player played with us. So yeah, we had crazy guys up on stage, and it was great for the docs because the doctors got to meet these guys. They're super nice guys. They're not arrogant, crazy rock star guys. They're just regular humble guys making a living and doing session work. And yeah, it was good event for the docs. Lots of fun for me. Um, Power practice tagline. I don't know if you're still using it. It was "Power your dreams" or "Let us power your dreams." And I remember after one of the shows, one of the doctors got to sing a Janis Joplin song, um, and she came up afterwards and she said, "Not only are you powering my dreams in my office, you're powering like my real dream was to always sing that song with a good band." So
Well, and that's so cool. And it kind of reminds us all that while we're business people for a part of our lives, right? And we're caregivers, caregivers in the chair, but we're also human. And as humans, we've got families, we've got passions, we've got hobbies, we've got things that we want to do. And really, when you run a business, part of the risk you take as a business owner also should have some reward associated with enabling your passion and setting you up for success afterwards. So we'll get more to that, I think. The question I have for you is that, the people who are listening to the show most likely right now have not moved past optometry. And, we've got people who are in various stages of practice, some that may be retiring in 5 years, some that may be looking for an offer right now, some that, maybe just started and they're
they're kind of in the early stage of their career. But the universal truth, and I learned this, I think, a little bit too late in my business career, is that you should always be building a business on the principles that if you had to sell it at any moment, you're maximizing the enterprise value. And so maybe there's two components to maximizing the enterprise value. There's the stuff you should be doing operationally, and then there's the stuff you should be doing a couple of years before you're ready to sell. So why don't we start with the fundamentals, because I think that's where it makes sense to say, okay,
Yeah.
am I doing this right now or am I not?
Yeah. So when I was when I was active consulting full time, if we had a doctor, let's with your timeline, let's go to the earliest possible case would be somebody who is in optometry school who would call us
Hmm.
up and say, I'm thinking of I got 2 years to go. I'm thinking of opening a practice. What should I do? And I was going to say one of the first, but probably the first question I would ask those students, because not yet doctors, is how do you plan to exit the practice? And they would say, well, what practice are we talking about? And I say, well, the one that you want to build and that's going to support you. And if you have a family, support your family. Like, what's the plan to get out? And they were like, oh, I guess I'm not going to hire this guy. He didn't even understand my question. Um, and then we would go deeper and deeper into it. And I think that you have to build your business if you want to maximize enterprise value. And just for definitions, it's like, to me, enterprise value is what's the whole mishmash worth?
Yep.
Your uh, everything from the value of your current lease, if you have one, if you don't own your building, the obviously your financials, your how much cash is it throwing off EBITDA, um, the likelihood of your staff sticking around, your goodwill, your inventory, your fixtures, your furnishings, it's everything. And if you look at it that way, what you're really selling is the ability of the business to continue performing as it is now after you're not there. So to me, that's kind of really what it's about. So if you think about how am I going to build this from the start so I can sell it later so it functions just as good with me as without me, that's the way to build your practice. And that's not the way a lot of doctors want to hear. It's not what doctors want to hear. And
Why not? Why don't they want
well,
to hear
to the doc, I can understand it because I went through it and I didn't really, that light bulb didn't go off for me. I didn't know that when I was a student. I didn't know it when I was 5 years into practice. I didn't really click that until maybe 7 or 10 years. I started thinking about it. Uh, and you put all this time in school, the investment, the time, the money, the sweat, the emotion, and like you personally want to be rewarded. And the linchpin, like the foundation branding of your practice, you think should be you. And
it?
as soon as you do that, you're gonna have trouble selling practice. I shouldn't say trouble. You won't sell it for as high a value as it could be if it's not about you specifically. And an example that I use, there's kind of two things you can think about. I could go in front of a group of docs, 50, 60 docs in a room at a local society meeting, giving a lecture. And I would always ask, does anybody here go to a fast food restaurant more than, say, once or twice a month? I usually get one or two guys who raise their hand. With docs, you don't get it that often. Hopefully we eat a little bit better, but who knows? And every now and then I find somebody who would go once once or twice a week. So let's say 7 to 10 times a month. And I would say, do you usually go to the same place? And they would say yes. So let's use an example of I go to Burger King. Um, I go 7 to 10 times a month. Do you usually go to the same one? Yep. I go, it's like 3/4 of a mile from my office. So I go to the same one because it's fast. And I ask them questions like, do they always have napkins? Yes. Do they ever run out of ketchup? No. Do you always order the same thing? Yes. Most of us do. In most restaurants, you usually get the same thing. Um, and I said, okay, so in the last year, you've gone, I don't know, 100 times. Yep. And I asked a really simple question. Do you know the name of the manager? And 100% of the time, they say no. And you're obviously not going back because of the people. You're going back for, let's call it an event, even though it's fast food. But
Yeah.
the event is kind of culminates with the Whopper. But the fact that you're going to have parking when you go there, uh, it's going to be open. If it's the middle of the summer, the air conditioning is going to be on. It's a very consistent, predictable, easy to do business, easy to hand them your money sort of event. And Burger King is, I think it's a franchise. I'm not sure, but they've obviously got multiple locations. And if you go to one and you go to another one, you're probably going to have a similar experience if you do them in the same country. And when you build your practice, if you think of it the same way, that I want to build a franchise practice, even if I just do one location, I want to make it in such a way that it offers a very predictable, reliable experience for patients that is not reliant on my ability to be here and tell funny jokes and have people remember my name. You're going to have a higher enterprise value because the next guy that steps in doesn't have to fill your shoes. They just have to run the business. And in effect, what you're selling is a playbook of how to run this practice.
Hmm.
And if you sell it to a younger doc, one of the biggest trepidations that doctors have is they don't know how to run the practice. Well, here's the playbook. Like this is it. Back in the kind of pre-internet, pre-cloud document days, we used to advocate that doctors have a book. Like here's the book. It's a
Hmm.
physical pieces of paper and a loose leaf binder that tells you this is how you open a practice, this is how you close the practice, and there's 6,000 pages in between or every single step. When you run out of copy paper, this is where you get it from. And this is the account, like everything step by step by step by step was in there. So if you wanted to go do it again and replicate it in another location, here's the book. Just go do this. Um, and most of us don't think of our practice that way. They think of our private practice owners think of it, it's our practice. It's all about me. And that is okay. Most practices run that way and they do fine. But those that do not run that way, that run more focused on the experiential side of it for the patients, where it's easy to replicate, will ultimately sell for a higher value. And I've been involved in hundreds of practice sale deals in the years I've been doing this. So I can say that with a high degree of confidence that the more codified or reproducible your systems are, the higher your enterprise value is going to be. No question about it.
And the thing is, Gary, what you're describing also tends to impact the staff too, because if I run my practice as a talent show, which is, I'm the main talent, and then everybody else, the key players in the practice are also a talent show. So
Hmm.
you think about the office manager and the front desk person and whatever, and so it's, hey, I ran out of copy paper. What do I do? Ask Kim. She knows
Yeah.
because Kim is the keeper of those particular
Yep.
secrets in the practice. And so you're then, in many ways, if you're running your practice as a collection of talent, or what I call the talent show, that it may be a very successful practice, but it's also a high risk enterprise, because as soon as Kim decides that she can't work anymore for whatever reason, maybe she got a job across town, or maybe her family moved out of the area, or maybe she has a health issue, or maybe
Right.
she's just retiring, at that point, the ability to transfer knowledge from Kim's head to somebody else's in what may be, 1 or 2 weeks is impossible. It's just impossible. And so then the practice has immediate impact on the patient experience that creates that creates trepidation. Other staff have to step up, and now they feel like they're doing 1 point something jobs, 1.5, 1.5 job, 1.3 jobs, whatever their number is at that point now they're feeling like you got to pay them more, and it starts this cycle of what I would call kind of uncertainty for the practice, which
Right.
then takes you out of your own talent, because you're the doctor who's super talented,
Hmm.
and you're there doing the show for the patients, takes you out of that talent point, and now you're in the weeds managing the nuances of the practice, trying to figure out where you should put the copy paper.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. The doctor should do doctoring, and that's kind of about all they should do. So it kind of begs the question, who's going to run the practice? It's an easy question. Anybody but the doctor.
Hmm.
And it should be somebody who really knows how to run a small business. Most practices office managers were former technicians who got promoted to opticians in a state where you don't need an optician's license, and they did really good at selling glasses, so they got promoted to an office manager. They have the managerial skills. It's a classic example. It's called the Peter Principle. People get
Yep.
elevated their level of highest incompetence,
Yep.
and then they no longer get elevated in positions because they can't do the role. So, yeah, the best offices I've ever worked with invariably have the best COOs, guys or girls who really know how to manage a small business and how to manage people. And doctors historically were not. Some of us are just, we're naturally good at it. But for the most part, we weren't trained how to do it. And it is a real skill managing a team of people, especially as you get more and more of them. It's harder to do. So I always think that one of the highest or the highest paid person in your office should be your office manager, COO, call them what you will, and then the doctor can be the CEO, which is somebody's got to make the strategic decisions. Which direction does the practice go? Do we bring in this new service? Do we jettison this service? Those types of things. Doesn't mean your hands off, but you're doing what you do best, which is from a purely mercenary financial side, it's generating revenue as a doctor because that's
Hmm.
you're the doc. Happens to be your practice, but you're the doctor. If you look
Well,
at
I've
real,
heard people say that you get paid multiple ways as an owner of the practice. You get paid to see patients and you get paid to own the practice. And you know you're successful when your hourly rate to own the practice when you're not seeing patients is higher than your hourly rate
right?
to see the patients. Now, you talked about the office manager component. I'm curious what you think, but how do you tell if your office is really a well-run office, and if your COO, as you call them, whatever their actual title in the office, is really that good, and how much of that is dependent on that person's ability to create process that's replicable in the practice to drive that enterprise value?
Yeah. Well, the process doesn't have to be created by one person. I mean, that can be somebody needs to be in charge of it and get it done. So the doctor can be involved with that and the getting it done and the overseeing it, but doesn't have to do the actual work. I like doing training videos. Back in the Stone Age, we actually used video cameras to do it. It's really tough to edit them, but now there's no excuse not to do it when you can do it with a phone.
Stone Age.
Yeah. Well, you can do it with a phone now, and it's
Yeah.
certainly easily
Well, you
editable
can
and
do it with AI
changeable.
now. You just
Yeah.
write the script and you give it to AI, and or
Yep.
AI can write the script for you.
Yep. So now phones are old school.
Yeah, right.
Uh, but there's no excuse not to have that now. Um, and it doesn't have to be one person. It could be collaborative, but somebody has to be the editor, if you will. And somebody's got to be the Steven Spielberg of this thing to make sure it all works and all comes together and makes sense. And that could be the doctor slash office manager slash COO. You got to get somebody who can really do this. You got to pay them a lot of money, pay them more money than you think they're worth. If this is a new concept for your practice, you're going to take a hit on your profitability when you first do this, because the fruits of the labor of doing this are not going to be readily apparent for a while. Sometimes it can take 6 months to a year. So the year you pull the trigger on this, you may go home with a little bit less money. After that, you'll go home with more money and markedly less work. And then relates to your question of how do you know if it's kind of working? Um, I talk to doctors who say, which this really hurts, but they say things like, I either haven't had a vacation in 10 years, I've had no vacation, or I've never taken more than like 4 or 5 days off. And they're self-employed. So you sit down, you have a heart to heart, and you say, why did you decide to become self-employed when you were in school? You could have worked in 1,000 other places, could work for the doctors, other big corporate places. There's a lot of things you can do. Why did
Yeah,
you
right.
decide to open up your own practice? I want to be my own boss. Okay, what's one of the benefits of being your own boss? I get to take time off when I want to take time off. Okay, but you're not doing that. You're not taking time off. So you're not hitting that initial fundamental goal you set out for yourself 15 years ago. You think it's time to do it. You got to get somebody who can help run a practice for you, and it should run when you're not there. Well, I don't have a doctor to fill in, so I can't do that. So there's two easy answers for that. One is when you did take a vacation 10 years ago and you got for 4 days, did you have a practice to come back to? Absolutely. Right. So if you're gone, you know what? Doesn't matter. Your patients will wait. They'll wait 4 days to see it. And if they don't and they go someplace else, if you lock the door for 4 days and didn't see any patients and you never recoup that revenue, how much of a disaster is that going to be to your life? It's like it's not, it's just not going to make a difference. So if you can't find a doc to fill in, because some doctors in like super remote areas, it is really tough to get a doc.
Hmm.
If you're one of those docs, this is even more of a reason to do that. So the office can still run. They can't get an eye exam, but everything else is still up and running. People are picking up classes, they're booking appointments, they're getting the contact lenses. Um, and the other thing, if you're in an area where there are a lot of doctors available, but you don't have one, well, that should be part of your system. What is the system for when the doctor owner wants to take a vacation? Well, the first thing is he has to alert the office manager and say, 8 months from now, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks. So we need to plan for that today. Let's start. Okay, we got to get an associate. Okay, we have, you know what? We got 8 months to figure this out. Let's make sure we get somebody. And if you approach it that way, where it's a significant project, you should be able to get somebody. And again, if you don't, yeah, think about, to me, the ultimate test of this whole concept is COVID, when we had no choice but to close the shut the door, lock the door. Nobody's in the office. A lot of cases, nobody was picking up the phones, and we're fine. Right? It was incredible angst,
Hmm.
and I hope we never ever go anything remotely like that again, related to that again. Um, I was still at the power practice at the time. That was the most stressful month I had as a business owner of the power practice of my life, because I felt this responsibility for hundreds of practices to make sure those guys stayed open. And it was brand new to me to, how do you deal with something like that? Um, and I will say, yeah, we did not have a system in the power practice that had to deal with a mass closure of Earth.
Oh,
Right?
I mean, who did?
Right, that was not
But
our
I will
playbook.
also say that looking at the data, your response during that period of time, those were some of the most listened to Power Hour episodes
Yeah.
of all time. And the reality is that you were hosting conversations to try to get people to help people figure it out. And I think you creating a channel and medium for that was awesome. And I also think it speaks to this whole concept of you need to have a system in your practice, right? It's not just process, it's the
Right.
system. And the system is, I think, the collection of people and process in order to be able to execute on whatever you're trying to accomplish in that practice.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a book that I've heard of. It's by Michael Gerber. He's not related to me. It's called The E-Myth Revisited. And he's got a line everybody talks about. You go to any practice manager lecture, they talk about this guy. And it says you got to work on the practice, not in your practice. Um, you have to do both. And we tend to not work on the practice. We don't put the time in to get those systems in place that are reproducible and can run without us. We just don't, as a majority of docs, we don't put the effort and the time in to do that.
Okay,
Um,
so let me ask you a couple of questions on this
mhm.
concept. So first of all, I think buying buying the concept that the practice needs to run without the owner, totally, that increases enterprise value. What if your practice is named Smith Optometry and you are Dr. Smith? Should you be listening to this episode and thinking, when am I going to rename that to something else?
No, it doesn't matter. Did you ever hear of Stanley Pearl? He did pretty good for himself. Right? Now, right now, Pearl version. Um, have you ever walked into a KFC and met the Colonel? The Colonel doesn't make the chicken, right? So yeah, it doesn't matter. I think it doesn't hurt if you do it, but it does involve a whole rebranding. So if you're Dr. Smith, you can certainly set up a practice such that it doesn't really matter who the doctor is. It's Dr. Smith's optometry practice. Doesn't mean Dr. Smith is in the practice. So you can nuance it. It's been done in a million different businesses. Steinway, right? You have Steinway pianos. I've never met Mr. Steinway, but I love his pianos, and I would buy another one, right? Um, yeah, it's a whole nother show that you should probably do just on naming businesses. Yeah, to me, like the name and the brand is it's like an empty box that you start with, and there's a box, and on the outside of it, it says Dr. Smith, and anything can go inside that box, and the things that go in start to create the personality of the
Hmm.
practice, um, and that becomes the brand of Dr. Smith's practice, not the name per se. And there's a million examples. Like if we had this discussion 40 years ago and said, Eugene, I want to start a company called Apple. What do you think I'm going to sell? I don't think you would say computers. And if I said I'm going to start a company called Google, what kind of stupid word is that? You making kids toys? What is
Hey,
Google?
do you know the first name of Google?
No idea.
Backrub. That was the name of the company, and the reason why is because Google, one of the major one of the major metrics for whether a website should show up first when you looked for a keyword, or it should show up second or third or whatever, was because you would know based off of the number of backlinks that site got, which is links from other websites on the internet. So if I had 10 backlinks and you had one, my website would show up higher than yours, for like if we were trying to compete for the same keyword. So in the early days of Google, thank God they renamed it. The company was called Backrub.
Yeah, but they probably could have done just fine. It may not have been as easy, but they would have been fine. The name kind of doesn't matter. It really, yeah. So, in the topic of building value and everything else, yeah,
You
I
know,
don't
you
think it
talked about
matters.
the system. Let's talk about like five, maybe let's go three big mistakes that people make when they erode enterprise value in their practice. So we already talked about how like you do everything yourself, you're the talent show, whatever. So we already got that one. So let's go to the other three that you've seen, and especially if you've been involved in hundreds of transactions, where have people been sucker punched the most?
Too much inventory is
Yeah.
a big one. Walked into practices that have literally 3,000 frames. Some of them are stuck away in boxes and drawers and the backs in place that they've already paid for. Um, I think of frame inventory as when you look at your frame is sitting up on a wall, substitute that for money. So there's $100 bill sitting up on a wall. You can't spend it for something else. Uh, and then the other mistake is not if you're gonna use this model and you want to have a system that works, it means you can, and people are gonna think I'm pretty mercenary about this, but you want to be able to plug and play employees into your system once it's set up.
Hmm.
So if you have somebody that you've plugged in who is not performing, you got to get rid of them and you got to plug in somebody else. Or as Disney would say, ask them to find their happiness elsewhere. That's a polite way to fire.
Right.
Well, even Disney can be nice when they fire people.
You know,
Um,
that's interesting though, because it automatically implies there's so much behind that statement, because it automatically implies that you can measure whether or not somebody is performing, which means that when you have that opening that you're plugging someone else into or someone into, you got to have a way to tell where they should be 3 months after they've been plugged
mhm.
into that thing, 6 months, 12 months. And when I say a way to tell, it's not just objective, like, oh, hey, there's no garbage on the desk type of thing. It's what are the KPIs? What are the metrics of success for that particular person, right?
Yeah, and that's something that's in your process, right? And that's part of that process is when you hire that new plugin. That sounds really mean. That new person that you're gonna hire, you tell them when they get hired, this is how your performance is going to be measured. Like that's only fair. You can't tell them 3 months from now you didn't hit these metrics. I don't know. I was supposed to. Um, and look now, everything it's easier to measure with all the online tools that are out there. Even the soft pieces that are important, like the patient interaction side, and where all your questions answered. And we have pretty good access to our patients now between their cell phones and their email. So there's no excuse. You can't get 10 or 15% of the responses. You should be able to get them back. You put a little bit of effort into it. And that's if you send out enough, the absolute number is going to be high enough. You can make some real decisions based on real numbers. So yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, just talking about inventory, you would tell who's ever running your inventory, presumably your optician, I never want to have more than 400 frames on a board. Like that's it. And if if I happen to do a random count one day, or wouldn't it be maybe the COO does more than a random count, does a random count does more than 400, that's a problem. Like 400 is the max.
Is that the right number, by the way, for any practice, or how'd you get 400?
I think it depends, but I think we can make a universal statement that most practices have way too many frames. Yeah, what happens is a little off topic, but it's important because the optical is still, as you know, and doctors don't like to fess up to, it's still a huge profit center. The biggest profit center for almost every practice out there is their optical. Even those guys that say, I don't care about glasses, I do a lot of medical billing. Oh, okay, good for you, keep doing it. But you're still making more money selling glasses. There's no
Hmm.
question about that. Um, so you want to manage that part of your practice really effectively, which means you want to keep as many of your patients in your office getting glasses from you instead of someplace else. And it's really simple retail. If they have too many choices and they can't decide because they feel like I'm putting on this frame and I like it, I think it works well, but there's like 60 others I didn't even try yet, and it's almost like overwhelming. So my decision is to decide not to buy anything, is to delay and to not buy because I just can't decide. I'm just overwhelmed. So I think minimalistic inventories work well. You need good salespeople to be able to do it. And you walk in. I spoke about Apple. Walk into the Apple store. Talk about minimalistic inventory. Um, and they have actually been criticized by Wall Street since, I don't know, the last couple of years. There's just too many products in the Apple store. It's hard to decide. It's getting confusing. I was just looking at an Apple Watch, and I think they're right. There's too many permutations. I think if they would have said to me, you can get these two watches with these three bands, like that's it. It was like too many
Hmm.
choices. Let the aftermarket guys have the other stuff, but at least get me to get the basic watch. And I walked out with my old watch. I didn't get anything, and that was one of the reasons. It was just there's too much going on here.
Well, yeah, there's lots of psychology, consumer psychology, that supports that the more choices you give a consumer, the less likely they are to make a choice. And so your sales process needs to be finely tuned. I think the perception of inventory needs to be there. Like, I'm going to find
Yeah.
my solution here.
Hmm.
But I think also the reality is that your salespeople need to be good enough to narrow that inventory down quickly, and not to be like, go
Yeah.
browse the board and pick the 60 you like, right? Like that's not
Yep.
the, you know,
Yeah. That doesn't
that's
work.
not the approach.
Yeah.
But if you're, whether you're curating, whatever experience you're trying to curate, whether you're picking frames off the board or walking the board with your patient, I agree with you. I think it can't be overwhelming. It needs to be something that's, we've narrowed it down to three. Let's talk about these, which two of these three you're getting.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Which are your sunglasses? Which are everyday glasses? And when you come back to pick them up, we'll get you the third one. All right. The
Yeah.
one you could. Yeah. Absolutely. That's kind of basic retailing. Let's talk a little bit about because I want to connect the dots before time runs out between enterprise value and life after optometry.
So
Um,
why don't you connect those two topics? Then we'll take a break, and then I actually want to hear exactly what you're doing with the life after
yeah,
optometry.
yeah. So think of it this way. Right before the break, a little tease is what if you started your practice with, and I did not do this. I don't really have too many regrets as an optometrist, but I kind of regret this because I could have been doing music more and sooner, but I'm doing okay, which we'll talk about. Um, What if I started the practice saying, I'm building this practice with the intent to get out as soon as I can and go play with a rock band? Like that's why I'm doing it. That's my goal in this practice. Um, that would mean that I would have to build it in such a way that I don't have to be there. That's the first part we just talked about. And then the second part is while I'm there, I also have to cultivate the music part of my career at the same time.
All right, we'll be right back on the Power Hour. We're back on the Power Hour with the legendary Dr. Gary Gerber, and we're talking about life after optometry. And if you heard the tease before the break, the interesting part, as Gary's saying, work in your practice or run your practice as if you're thinking about how quickly can I get out and do the thing that I really want to do afterwards. And also, while I'm doing it, how can I do more of that thing that I love so that, work and life are really actually balanced, which is that elusive, I guess, corporate nonsense that, all of us hear all the time, work-life balance.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's a ridiculous phrase. Whoever came up with that is an idiot. That needs to go away. There's no such thing. It's just life. Right? It's just life, right? Uh, so in my case, my outlet for optometry was music, as I mentioned briefly. And once I kind of got into this business zone of having a practice run more by itself, I made a concerted effort to really put more time in with my music. So I'll give you an example that when I say this now, it's still hard to believe that I did this, but I was when I was growing up, 80s kind of hair band rock, progressive music. There was a couple of bands I always thought, wow, like that's the band I want to play with, because keyboard players were always like the kind of nerdy guy in the back of the band. Like keyboards were never cool. I'm not a guitar player. I'm not a drummer. And a keyboard player's a nerd in the back. But there were a couple of bands where keyboards were prominent. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it be cool to play with one of those? So one of the bands, turns out that the lead singer from the band actually lived in North Jersey. I didn't know exactly where, but I just knew he lived there. Actually, a lot of musicians live in North Jersey, Long Island, uh, Southern Connecticut, just because of going to New York City to record there. Uh, so I was doing some recording in some local Jersey studios for years. Not a lot, because I didn't have the time because of practice. And I just kind of made it my mission to find out, where is this guy recording? Like, where is he doing his work? It's probably going to be New York City. Turns out, and this is kind of what happens when you put your mind to it. Turns out he was actually doing a lot of recording in a studio that I didn't even know existed. That was about 5 minutes from my practice.
Wow.
True story, right? Really pro grade studio. Um, then it turns out the engineer who was in his practice was a guitar player I used to play with years ago when I was a kid, like in college. I played in a band with this guy. I didn't know he built it. It's like this totally killer studio. Called him up. I said, "You got any sessions with this singer dude?" And he goes, "Yeah, he comes in 2 or 3 times a year." I said, "Do me a favor. Next time he comes in, let me know. I want to be here. I just want to meet the guy." Um, so he did. He called me up, and I was there, and I got to meet the singer, and the engineer said, "I want you to meet this is my friend Gary. He's a turns out he's a doctor right down the street." And the guy kind of looks at me. I've looked like this for a long time. And he goes, "This guy's a doctor." um, and I said, "Oh, I'm also a keyboard player. Do you need one? Do you need one in your band?" And he goes, "Maybe." So I thought he was just being polite, right? Um, 2 or 3 months later, I get a phone call. He's got a very recognizable voice. He goes, "My band's going on a tour in about 2 months. Do you want to play with us?" So without giving it a second thought, I said yes. And I wasn't ready. Technically, I wasn't ready. It involved like a ton of work. At the same time this is all going on, we're just about to start to open our first Treehouse Eye Center. Talk about like stress and pressure. So
Uh-huh.
our first two centers are opening up in Washington, D.C. I'm living in North Jersey at the time, driving back and forth to DC. So I said, there's only one way I'm going to do this. I already told them yes. I got the set list. I got to learn these songs. And this stuff was pretty tough to play. We were, my partner, Matt, who, we were staying in a hotel in DC. Like I would drive down on Monday, come home Friday. And I started driving down with my keyboards in the back of my car. I would set them up in a hotel room. And at the end of a long, really long work day with Treehouse Eyes, I'd be back at the hotel at 10 through 11 o'clock at night until 2, 3 in the morning. I was practicing.
I
Um,
bet your neighbors love that at the hotel.
yeah, well, that's,
Oh, headphones,
you
headphones.
have headphones, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just a lot of pressure to go to get ready to go do the shows. And then
But it sounds like the thing that drove that was that you said yes to a dream opportunity, if I'm kind of connecting the dots,
Mhm.
and that dream opportunity had a timeline that forced you into action in a way
Yeah,
that wouldn't have if that dream opportunity wasn't around, right?
yeah. And the first step before that was I committed. There was definitely a lot of luck here, but I committed to doing something. And I think if this didn't show up, the fact of my point here with enterprise value and everything else, part of my process when I made this decision, my process is I'm going to go play in a band. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna take the steps necessary to play in a band. Let me give you an example. Like if you have a project in the office, let's bring it back to the office for a second. You have a project in the office. You want to recall patients who have not been in a practice, say for 2 years. You keep hearing it's a good idea, get these people to come back in. So you need to put a stake in the ground and work backwards. So let's make up a day. So let's say August 5th is the important day that you're going to launch this campaign. And we're starting now. It's the end of June-ish. So we've got 6 or 7 weeks to get this done. So if you say August 5th, how many patients have been in 2 years? Make the numbers easy. Let's say it's 100 patients. I know it's going to be more. Let's start to work backwards. I have a goal. I want to get 30 of those to come back between August 5th and the next year, next August 5th, to reactivate those patients. Okay. So you start working backwards and you're going to say, how are we going to communicate with them? Well, we have 100. So let's send 10 of them an email, 10 of them a text. Let's see which one does better. And then the rest of them get that. I mean, this is all marketing 101 for you, right? This is easy stuff. My point is we're making a commitment to do this and then we're working backwards to be able to pull it off. So when I
Well, it's
decide
really
I'm
like any goal, right? Like any goal, and I like to think about it quarterly. It's that every quarter, I don't care if you do it on the quarter or somewhere midpoint of the quarter. In our company, we do it in the first 2 weeks of the last month of the quarter.
Mhm.
Is you assess and then you recommit and you say the next 90 days, what absolutely needs to be done in the next 90 days, and then let's work backwards and figure out who needs to be involved and how is it going to get, and then we draw a line in the sand. And in EOS terminology, or I guess in um, Franklin Covey terminology, that's rocks, right? Like you
yeah,
just build your rocks.
yeah,
But I think you're
rocks,
absolutely
wigs,
right.
whatever. Yeah.
That's
Yep.
the thing.
Yeah.
You have to be able to commit.
Yeah. So with connecting the dots to enterprise value with life after optometry, I made a commitment that, you know what, I'm gonna play when I finally get out of optometry, I'm gonna be a musician, I'm gonna play in a band. Like that's what I'm gonna do. So now I have to pick a date. When am I getting out? And I knew when I was gonna sell my practice, right? Uh, so I said to be able to do that, a couple things. I gotta get my chops back. I gotta start playing a lot. I start practicing a lot. I gotta go find a band, and that's kind of why I said I got lucky with this guy being right down the street. But the point is, if it wasn't him, I was now actively looking to go do something. Right? And if I want to up my golf game, I'm not a golfer, so this might not make sense. But if I want to up my golf game, I guess first of all, I have to maybe get golf lessons from somebody. So I got to find like a really good golf teacher. And if I don't have one, I got to start that process. And if I want to be a respectable golfer, let's say 1 year from now, I'm going to start to work back. And one of the first things I'm going to have to do probably is find somebody to teach me. Then I'm going to have to work into my optometry schedule that X hours per week. I have to not be here because I got to go practice golf. And I can't do that till I get a system in place. I can't do that till I get a COO. So you kind of working backwards, but you
Yeah.
have the goal. I want to get out of practice, and my goal is I want to be in a tour bus with a bunch of like great musicians.
Well,
Um,
and it's interesting because I just want to make one, because I love your point, and I want to make one addition is that you really have to define that goal in a crystal clear way. So, when you said, I want to, I want to play in a band with this guy, right? That's a really compelling, clear articulation of that goal. I worry that people say, well, I want to play more golf is the
All right.
answer. Well, okay, what does that mean? I guess, you played one more time this year than you did last year. Is that more? Is that good for you? Or I want to spend X amount of time. For me, I love to be on the water on the boat. So I'm thinking about what you're saying. I'm thinking about, like, I got to write down a number of days a month that I want to be out on the water. And in the same way, I want to be a respectable golfer. Well, is it like a score that you want to hit, or the number of
All right.
times that you get to play, or you want to play with a particular person? Those are the things that making that goal super specific and then working backwards from it. I love that mentality, and I'm kind of thinking about the things I'm passionate about and how I potentially work that into my life.
Yeah, it works in your practice. If you pick something, admittedly, like I said, I got lucky. If you pick something super lofty, like I want to play in the NFL, right? It's probably not going to happen. Okay. But if pick something that you love to do, we're talking about life after optometry, could be whatever. It doesn't have to be a sport, doesn't have to be a avocation. Could just
Could
be
be
one.
time with your family. Could
Yeah,
be
you want
number of
today,
hours.
you want
I
to
heard a guy
just,
in our industry talk about the number of, and it was extremely depressing to hear the number of spring breaks you have left with your kid, or the number of meaningful summer vacations you have left with your kid. And you just, like, whatever that number is, it's always less than 18, and like it always
yeah,
seems small. So,
yeah, yeah,
so
no, yeah. Yeah, now it's a question, can I get my kids to come to my concerts? Come up and
that,
see, now they got their own life to live in it. They don't live with me anymore, it's so yeah, luckily we're doing a lot of the band I'm with now, different band. Anyway, so that story, so that guy played with him toured with him 6, 7 years. He moved to Belarus, so he's out of the country.
mm,
So kind of put the music thing on hold for a while. Treehouse Eyes got up and running, jamming, taking a lot of time. Now I've got a little bit more time. And I'm actually playing with a band now, which I still can't believe because I'm still a rocker at heart, but I'm actually playing with a Jimmy Buffett tribute band. Go figure that out.
that's
And
pretty awesome, actually.
yeah, these guys play all over the place. We played in Colorado Springs last week. We're going to Eastern Ohio coming up. We're playing at the Padres game here in San Diego. Play all over Southern California. Um, yeah, it's called, if anybody wants to look, you can see a picture of me with a Hawaiian shirt on. It's called thejimmysbuffet.com. But we're all over the place. We're playing the Orange County Fair in a
I'll put a
couple of
link in
weeks.
the show notes for
Yeah,
everybody.
thanks. Thank you. Yeah, it's crazy. Never thought after playing, Smoke on the Water with the singer from Deep Purple, I'd wind up playing Margaritaville with a Jimmy Buffett tribute band. But
But you know what? That's the thing, and we talked a little bit about this before the show, and I still want to know the answer to this, because I feel like any hobby I would get involved in, I would always be curious about I don't know, the business of that hobby. I just can't
right.
turn it off as
Yeah,
a business guy. It's like I get involved with little things all the time, and then I'm like, oh, like I need to help optimize this. I need to help these guys run this better, right? That kind of thing. So how do you turn that off?
yeah. It's you caught me off guard with that question. It was, do I get involved with the business side of the band? And I can happily say no. Um, I'm at the point now, maybe it's wisdom of being a little bit older. It's just go up there and do your thing and have fun and let the business be the business. And there's 9 guys in this band. There's a lot of gear we got to move around. There's a whole stage show that we do. Stuff got to get moved around from place to place. I mean, there's a lot of work, let alone managing 9 personalities. They're all musicians, so we're all crazy. Everybody's got an opinion about everything. You can't think about this. You can't get 2 optometrists to agree where they should go for lunch. How are you going to get 9 musicians to agree on which song we should play next? Right? It's so in a way, it's kind of nice that I'm not involved. And I just kind of step back. Whatever happens, happens. A lot of stuff I would do differently, but it's okay. I'm having fun. The
Well,
audiences
that's the
are,
thing, is that this is, and you're kind of in enjoyment mode and in passion mode, right? Like you don't
yeah,
go to a Mexican resort and like try to think about how you would manage the resort, or you start giving the pool boy management tips,
yep,
and to try to re optimize a schedule.
yeah. Yeah, I would always, I mean, for years when I was in heavy consulting mode, I couldn't go out to dinner without like finding
Oh yeah,
something wrong. Not with the food, because I'm not a foodie. It was terrible, I would know, but just like the system of how they ran it, they should have done this, they should, or flip side, well, they do that really good. How can I steal that idea and bring it back,
exactly.
bring it back to my doctors? Uh,
That's me everywhere, and
yeah,
I can't turn it off anywhere at this point. But
it's, you know, it just brought up an example. Uh, I was in Malaysia a long time ago, and real long time ago, like 30-ish years ago. And it was the first time I remember after a meal, they came up at the table with like a credit card thing, and it actually had a wire connected to it. Because I guess it was pre-Wi-Fi and maybe Al Gore didn't invent the internet yet. It was a long time
right,
ago. But you were paying for your meal at the table. And now everybody does that. They show up, they give you they give you a keypad, put your tip in. I want to ask you a couple of questions. I love that one. Here, put your card in, it's gonna ask some questions. What kind of questions? Who do I think should be the next president? What kind of questions are you gonna ask me? Right? Uh, so, and I remember seeing that and stressing over, wow, that was so cool. Like that saved them a lot, it saved them a lot of time. And it was easier for the customer, in my opinion. How do I bring that in to my
and it probably
doctor's
maximized the
offices?
tip because the guy's standing over you.
Yeah, right there, right?
Yeah,
It's like how do I bring that into an office? And like can I just enjoy it with something cool? No, I wasn't able to. But now I just yeah, having fun playing. I didn't know this. Jimmy Buffett fans are called parrot heads, which I didn't even know was. I thought Jimmy Buffett only had
parrot
one song,
heads.
parrot heads, like
Huh.
parrots. Um,
Yeah,
and Parrothead fans, Eugene, this is crazy. We haven't done a single show that hasn't sold out yet. We did an outdoor show in Palm Desert. It was over 1,000 people there. Um,
wow.
they, it's just nuts, and they know the words to every song. They know like words to B-side songs. All I knew about Jimmy Buffett before this band was Margaritaville. I thought he was a one-hit wonder. I had no idea this guy had all these songs. The songs are actually pretty cool. The words are really good. He's a really good lyricist. Um, Having fun on the keyboard parts. I'm playing typical keyboards, piano, organ, but then I got to play the strings and the horns and the harmonica solos and some oohs and ahs and some percussion sounds. I'm having fun. It's cool. It's a
That's
fun little
awesome.
gig.
And the thing is, I see the smile on your face, and I think the reality is, like you said, it's the thing that you wanted to do the whole time, and now you get to do it.
Yeah.
And I think the whole point of this show is helping people do that sooner in their life, and also set their business up for success to be able to really be able to enable the kinds of things that you want to do as passion projects, not necessarily as passion projects, but as full time.
Yeah, it's just saying if I knew then what I knew now. It's yeah, it's I mean, so now you guys are listening to the show, so now you know it. So you gotta do it. And I mean, this is something like how could now you think about it this way, how could you not want to do this? Because I don't think anybody says I want to die with the phoropter in my hands. Like that would be a little odd, right? There's other things in life. I don't get me wrong, I didn't not like practicing. It was great. I had a great career. I had a great practice. Um, and it was fine. It was other things I wanted to do. I didn't have this mindset early on. If I did, I think I could have got to this point maybe 10 or 15 years sooner. I just wasn't thinking about it at the time. But with all this information we have now to push out to docs, the show, and just to everything that does go on online that was not available back then, I mean, there's really no reason not. I mean, you can have it all. You can really have a great practice and you can have a great life.
And I love the next step, right? Is that find your passion, quantify it, and start working backwards towards that quantified passion involvement in your life.
Yep. Yep. It's
All right,
either
Gary.
practice your piano scales or practice your golf swing, whatever it's going to be.
Whichever, and anything in between.
Yep, exactly.
All right, Gary, pleasure having you on the show. As
Thanks,
always,
Eugene.
great conversation. Thanks so much for being on the Power Hour.
My pleasure. Thank you. Great to be here.